that's the uncomfortable element in the room that people don't want to talk about, that life requires death somewhat. And what's always most interesting to me in people's reaction to hunting is not necessarily the angry militant vegan. They're going to be angry about your choice to eat meat anyway, and probably more angry at the fact that you killed this poor defenseless animal. But the people that eat meat but are really triggered by hunting, because that highlights the almost like hypocrisy and disconnection from food, like no other. They just pick it up from the supermarket. They kind of are willing to turn a blind eye that these animals were alive at one point and they were killed, and potentially, and I'm sure you'd make this argument, that the most humane, the healthiest way and the most natural way is a hunting-based model of trying to feed your family most of that instead of most of what comes from the grocery store. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think there's like two viewpoints that kind of separate themselves pretty quickly when I'm talking to someone that doesn't agree with hunting. The first is a true vegan, right? And when I talk to those people, it's like, agree to disagree on our place in the world as humans, right? Mm-hmm. On how we interact with the world around us, and talk to them more about like footprint of supply chain, right? The footprint of your vegetables and your fruit and your carbohydrates also has an impact on animals and wildlife. Mm-hmm. I go that route with those folks. For the folks that eat meat and have a problem with hunting, then the second conversation that you mentioned, you start to dig in there, right? Like, let's talk about that. You know, if you're eating meat from the grocery store, that animal was, if it's a conventional beef cow, for instance, it lived the last months of its life eating out of a trough, in very confined space, and just didn't have access to the things that, nature intended animals to have access to, like, clean water, open pasture, freedom to move around, interact with the world around it, see other animals, all of these sentient emotions, are kind of taken away from it and deprived of, a lot of life, right? And so is that a better system, or harvesting an animal that's living out its God-intended purpose, in its native habitat, likely with members of its species, maybe even family members close by, interacting with the world around it, trying day in and day out to survive, because that is what nature is, right? That's their number one goal every day, is to survive and thrive and reproduce. But they're doing it the way they were intended to do. And when you hunt them, ideally, you're taking them from that very quickly, where that transition, there is no in between, right? They're going from nature to food.
Yeah, and I guess you could very fairly ask the question, which is the more humane, which is the less cruel, and potentially as well, which is the healthiest animal? Like you said, if that animal's managed to survive for that many years, it's pretty wise, it's healthy, it's not eating the feedlot, God knows, sprayed with, this not fit for human consumption waste product and confined to a feedlot. And I think that's a very important distinction you've got to make here. Hello, friends. If you enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the entire thing by heading to this link over here, or you can find us wherever you find podcasts by searching Radical Health Radio. If there's value here, please hit that like button. Let us know in a comment what your biggest takeaway was, and hit subscribe. Support the show as we support you. We'll see you soon.